A wife slacking off is simply unacceptable. If you're going to be lazy, then just leave. Half jokingly, my mother-in-law poured beer over my head, and I felt droplets trickling down my hair. As I glared at her, it hit me, it was time to leave this place. I'm Emerson, married to my husband, Derek, and we have a 10-year-old daughter named Sandy. Our family life is usually calm, but that peace dissolves every time we visit my in-laws. Once a month, we make the 20-minute drive to their home, a family tradition that feels more like a chore. Their house is more rural than ours, with fields where Sandy, who loves the countryside, can play, but each visit fills me with immense anxiety, as my mother-in-law always finds a way to make my life difficult. When we arrive, she immediately drops all her chores to entertain Sandy. While I appreciate her keeping Sandy busy, the downside is that she fills her head with negative things about me. Sandy, now at an age where she's starting to see through her grandmother's words, was much more susceptible when she was younger. "Tell mommy I hate her, go away, mommy would be so much happier," my mother-in-law would say to little Sandy. Hearing Sandy actually shout, "I hate you, go away," hit me like a punch to the gut. When I broke down crying at home, Derek and I were thrown into chaos. After he asked Sandy about it, we learned my mother-in-law had been poisoning her against me. Despite our protests, she seemed indifferent to the damage she was causing. I even told Derek I didn't want to visit them anymore, but he insisted we maintain our monthly visits. Perhaps it's because he's an only child, or maybe he's just a mama's boy, but he tends to believe most of what his mother says. Sometimes he even joins in on the torment, whether he realizes it or not. At their house, my mother-in-law piles all the housework onto me, so I end up in the kitchen cooking. Preparing meals in someone else's kitchen is always a challenge, and she never misses a chance to chime in. "Why on earth did Derek marry such a slow woman? Sandy and I are starving." Then Derek adds, "Well, you are a bit slow, Emerson. You like to take your time," fueling my frustration even more. On the drive home, after confirming that Sandy was asleep in the back seat, I confronted Derek. "Look, I know it's bad," he said, "but if I don't go along with Mom, she could say worse things. I'm trying to protect you from further insults." This made me explode. I fell silent for the rest of the ride, but that night, I told Derek that if things didn't change, I was seriously considering divorce. Every time we visit his parents, he sides with my mother-in-law, and I've had enough. He kept apologizing, but nothing changed. When I finally mentioned divorce, he looked genuinely shocked. "You dislike it that much?" he asked casually. "Of course I do. Why should I do all the household chores when we visit your parents? They're your parents, not my home. The only ones who ever help me out are Sandy and your dad. Since elementary school, Sandy has been pitching in with the dishes and folding laundry." His mother disapproves, but Sandy would say, "It's tough on Mom, isn't it? And help anyway. I'm just glad she turned out so well." What surprised me was Derek's dad stepping in to help. He's usually reserved, and I can never quite read his thoughts. Whenever I'm stuck vacuuming, he quietly gets up to do it himself, staying silent with a stern face while his wife speaks ill of me. It's hard to know what he really thinks. I turned to Derek and said, "You need to address this." He shifted uncomfortably before responding, "But it'll just put Mom in a bad mood. If you keep prioritizing her, we're definitely getting a divorce. I can't take it anymore." Wait, I never wanted a divorce, Emerson. It's better for Sandy to have both parents, right? Please, reconsider. Maybe you should be the one reconsidering. Who's more important to you, me or your mother? When I locked eyes with him, he sighed and said in a troubled tone, "You and Sandy are the most important." After a moment of silence, he continued, "Okay, I won't side with Mom anymore. I'll protect you, Emerson. Just give me a chance." I replied, "I don't really want a divorce either, but I can't live with a husband who just stands by while his mom harasses me. If you stop siding with her, I'll have no complaints about our marriage." Soon enough, it was time for another visit to his parents. They were hosting a barbecue in the yard, and Sandy could hardly contain her excitement. "Really? I love barbecues," she yelled, bouncing with joy. Derek matched her enthusiasm. I understood Sandy's excitement. She's just a kid. But Derek? He clearly relished the event because he wouldn't be the one doing all the work. Year after year, I was responsible for everything from the setup to the cooking. Derek's dad would pitch in, but it was mentally draining to work alongside him. My mother-in-law would inevitably complain that the meat was overcooked and tough, which had become the norm. For me, barbecues weren't a celebration. They were simply a stage for Derek to enjoy his food while I toiled away. "I expect you to back me up tomorrow. You promised," I reminded Derek the night before our visit. "Of course, I'll help with the barbecue prep too," he assured me, but I remained skeptical. If Derek didn't change, I would have to seriously consider divorce. With that thought in mind, I prepared myself for the visit, and to my surprise, he actually followed through. When we arrived, my mother-in-law casually remarked, You can just leave everything to Emerson. But Derek quickly interjected. It's not right for Emerson to handle all the prep and cooking. Mom, you take care of Sandy, and I'll help out. His mother, accustomed to lounging while the rest of us worked, looked taken aback by his words. Derek jumped in, lifting heavy items and even helping to light the fire. Thank you, I said, feeling a mix of relief and disbelief. He bashfully replied, it's my fault for not helping before. I wondered if this change was temporary, but his sincerity began to erase my doubts. As we prepared the barbecue together, Sandy piped up, I want to help too, and joined us. My mother-in-law, left alone, perhaps realized she couldn't just stand by doing nothing. Awkwardly, she fetched a cloth from inside and started wiping down the table. Maybe this meant the hostility was starting to fade, I thought, but just as I began to feel optimistic, I lost my balance while rising from a squatting position. I nearly lost my balance but caught myself just in time. My father-in-law, witnessing the whole scene, asked, Are you okay? Sorry, the heat got to me, I replied. Emerson, are you sure you're alright? Maybe you're getting heat stroke, he said with genuine concern. It might be better to rest in the shade. Hearing this, Derek chimed in, surprising me. He had never suggested I take a break at my in-laws before. I took him up on his offer and settled into a chair he brought into the shade. Inhaling deeply, my head was spinning, and I realized I was likely experiencing heat exhaustion. As I sipped on my sports drink, my mother-in-law approached me. Emerson, are you okay? I heard you weren't feeling well, she said. Thank you for your concern. I think I might have slight heat stroke, I admitted. It was unusual for her to express worry about me, and I was taken aback by her sudden shift in demeanor. Just moments ago, she had been sulking, but now she wore a beaming smile that felt unsettling. Maybe she was turning over a new leaf, just like Derek had, but my hope was short-lived. Out of nowhere, my mother-in-law revealed a can of beer she had been hiding behind her back and offered it to me. Have a drink and cheer up, nothing beats a cold beer on a hot day. I'd rather not drink alcohol right now, I responded. I had no idea if it was safe to consume alcohol while dealing with heat exhaustion, but I was definitely not in the mood for a beer. My refusal wiped the smile off her face, replaced by a strange, angry grin. You can't even drink a beer your mother-in-law offers? Why are you the only one feeling unwell while everyone else is fine? You're just slacking off, aren't you? I'm not slacking off. Maybe I didn't hydrate enough while preparing for the event, but heat exhaustion affects everyone differently, I countered, ignoring my explanation. My mother-in-law cracked open the can and, before I could react, poured it over my head. A daughter-in-law who slacks off is unacceptable. If you're going to take a break, then leave. Beer dripped from my hair as I glared at her, resolved to leave this place. Fine, I'll go. I'm just overheated. I steadied myself against the wall and prepared to storm off, but my father-in-law stepped in front of me. Emerson wasn't slacking off. She got sick from working so hard on the preparations, he said, directing his anger toward my mother-in-law. Both she and I were taken aback, her face flushing with rage. Who throws beer at someone like that? Have you lost your mind? My father-in-law's voice rose with intensity, revealing a side of him I had never seen before. I've wanted to stop you from bullying Emerson for a long time, but I didn't know how to say it. Enough of this childish nonsense. If anyone is leaving, it's you. He stormed away, only to return moments later with a towel for me. My mother-in-law stood there, stunned, as he continued, You should go take a shower, don't hesitate. Why? She screeched. I was bullied by my mother-in-law too back when she was alive. Why are you siding with Emerson now when you never stood up for me? My mom isn't the one causing trouble here, my father-in-law shot back, referencing Derek's late grandmother. He had often spoken of her as a gentle woman, molded by her own mother's teachings to serve her mother-in-law dutifully. My mother-in-law had followed that example, but now the tide was turning. That's when it clicked. My mother-in-law had the same expectations of me that her own mother-in-law had once imposed on her. What's all the commotion? Oh my God, Emerson, are you okay? Derek finally arrived, shock written all over his face as he took in the sight of me covered in beer. At that moment, my father-in-law raised his voice. Derek, you're also to blame. Sure, you've been working today, but leaving everything to Emerson isn't fair. You've sided with your mom to put her down. Protect your wife like a husband should. Yes sir. Derek looked stunned by his father's words but quickly regained his composure and led me to the bathroom to clean up. Since I hadn't brought a change of clothes, I borrowed one of Derek's old t-shirts and shorts. Still reeling from his father's outburst, Derek mumbled, I've never seen Dad talk so much. After I showered and changed, I returned to the yard, where my in-laws were busy grilling meat for the barbecue. My father-in-law noticed my return and turned to my mother-in-law. You need to apologize properly. Grudgingly, she said, I'm sorry. My father-in-law also offered me an apology. Struggling to find the right words, he acknowledged his role in allowing the harassment to continue, and he seemed genuinely remorseful. I had thought my father-in-law was a tough nut to crack, but it turned out he had been concerned about me all along. As I thanked him, my mother-in-law handed me a plate of grilled meat and veggies. Just sit down for today. Heat stroke is no joke. If you're not feeling well, feel free to go inside and cool down. I was taken aback by her kindness but quietly replied, "Thank you." I realized my mother-in-law must have faced her own hardships when she was younger. Perhaps that's why she assumed mistreatment was normal, and it took my father-in-law to help her break down that barrier. From that point on, my mother-in-law became incredibly kind to me, even lending me a dress she wore when she was younger. "This might not be the latest style, but wear this for your ride home." "This is super cute, thank you," I exclaimed. Her gentle smile as I expressed my joy at the retro-style dress made me think that maybe I could get along with my mother-in-law from now on. My premonition proved accurate. Ever since the barbecue incident, my mother-in-law stopped mistreating me, and we've been able to live peacefully with the in-laws.